Welcome back, everyone. I'm so glad you're here with us today because we have a brand new story to share. This is a story about love, heartbreak, and the moment when everything changes. My name is Tyler, and what I'm about to share isn't just any story. It's the moment that completely altered the course of my life. 2 years ago, I was deeply in love with a woman I thought would be my future. I gave her everything, my time, my loyalty, my heart. In my mind, we were building something real, something lasting. But in just one single night, everything I believed about our relationship came crashing down. I used to think that love was simple. If you care about someone and treated them well, they would do the same for you. That was the rule, right? But life has a way of proving you wrong. The woman I loved made a choice, one that showed me exactly where I stood in her life. And it wasn't where I thought. By the time this story is over, you'll understand why some people don't deserve second chances. I've always been a quiet type, the kind of person who values deep, meaningful connections over surface-level interactions. Jenny, on the other hand, was my complete opposite. She had this energy about her, this magnetic pull that made people want to be around her. She was the type of person who could walk into a room and instantly become the center of attention. And I love that about her. I thought that our differences made us stronger, that we balanced each other out. She was the spark, and I was a steady flame. There were times when I had the chance to leave the city. Better job offers, opportunities that could have set me up for success in ways I couldn't even imagine. But I stayed. I stayed because I loved her, because I thought we were working toward the same future. I pictured a life together, a home, maybe even a family someday. I was all in. And I truly believed that she was too. But I was wrong. That realization hit me like a ton of bricks on what should have been one of the happiest nights of my life. It was Jenny's birthday, our relationship anniversary, and the night I planned to propose. I had everything planned down to the last detail. Reservations at a beautiful restaurant, a small private table, the perfect moment. I had spent weeks rehearsing my words, imagining the way she would smile, maybe even cry, as I slid the ring onto her finger. I was nervous but excited. This was supposed to be our moment. Then, at the last minute, she decided to ditch our anniversary dinner for a wild party with her high-status friends. No discussion. No apology. Just a casual asterisk. Oh, I'll make it up to you. We can do dinner another day. Asterisk. I tried calling her, hoping she'd realize how much this night meant to me. Hoping she'd change her mind. But she brushed me off like I was being dramatic. You're overreacting, she said. It's just dinner. But it wasn't just dinner. She had no idea what she was throwing away. No idea that, in my pocket, I had a ring, ready to give her everything. And in that moment, something inside me just broke. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. How could someone I loved so much make me feel so invisible? How could I have been so blind? I had given her my heart, and she had chosen a party over me. The next morning, I woke up with a weight in my chest. I had cried myself to sleep, but somehow I still held on to this ridiculous hope that Jenny would realize what she had done and try to make things right. Maybe she'd call, maybe she'd text, asterisk something, asterisk. But the hours passed. Nothing. I checked my phone a few times, waiting for a message that never came. By the time the sun started setting, I knew the truth. If she cared, she would have reached out. If she had even an ounce of regret, she would have said something. But she didn't. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for a woman who had made it clear I wasn't priority. So I made a decision. Right then and there, I was done. I went through my phone, found her number, and deleted it. Then I blocked her on every social media platform. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Gone. Every picture, every message thread, every trace of her, erased. If she didn't want to make me a priority, then she wasn't going to have access to me anymore. I wasn't going to leave the door open for her to waltz back in whenever she felt like it. With Jenny out of the picture, I had to face another truth. There was nothing keeping me here anymore. I had passed up job opportunities because I didn't want to leave her behind. But now, staying felt pointless. I wasn't even going to wait for another offer to come through. I told myself, asterisk, when I get there, opportunities will come. I'm not going to let life happen to me anymore. I'm taking control, asterisk. That night, I sat my parents down and told them everything. How I had planned to propose, how I had spent weeks picturing our future together. Then, I told them how she threw it all away for one night of partying. My mom looked heartbroken for me. My dad didn't say much, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Not in me, but in the way Jenny had treated me. They supported my decision to leave. They knew I needed a fresh start. When they asked where I was going, I kept the details vague. The last thing I wanted was for Jenny to show up later with some half-hearted apology, trying to pull me back in. I needed a clean break. The next morning, I packed my bags and walked out of that house with no intention of ever looking back. I reached out to an old schoolmate, Daniel, who had moved to a bigger city a few years ago. We hadn't talked in a while, but when I explained my situation, he didn't hesitate. Come crash at my place for a while, he said. And just like that, I had a place to land. When I got there, I barely spoke about what had happened. Daniel could tell I was going through something, but he didn't press, and I was grateful for that. The last thing I wanted was to rehash the past. I just wanted to drown myself in work. And that's exactly what I did. I took on every job I could find, day shifts, night shifts, anything that kept me busy. I wasn't picky. I worked in warehouses, handled deliveries, even did some freelance tech work when I could. My body was exhausted, but my mind was too numb to care. I refused to check social media, refused to wonder what Jenny was doing, refused to even say her name in my own head. Relationships? Forget it. I didn't want to hear about love, dating, or anything that involved emotions. My only focus was me, making money, securing my future, and becoming someone who would never be left behind again. I had always been responsible with money, but now I took it to the next level. Every dollar I made was split into two categories, investing in myself and never looking back. When I first decided to take control of my life, I started by investing in the stock market. I immersed myself in learning, watching countless videos, reading every finance book I could get my hands on, and studying strategies to make my money work for me. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but slowly, I started seeing results. A few months in, my efforts paid off. I was finally able to move into my own place. It was nothing extravagant, just a small apartment, but it was mine. No more crashing on friends' couches. No more feeling like I didn't have a place to call home. 2 years flew by in what felt like an instant. The pain that had once consumed me no longer controlled my life. Looking back, I realized that Jenny had actually done me a favor. If she hadn't walked away that night, I might have never found the strength to walk toward the life I was truly meant to have. One ordinary day at the mall, I was just there to pick up a few things, not expected to run into anyone from my past, especially someone connected to Jenny. But as I turned a corner near the food court, I saw a familiar face. At first, it didn't register. Then it hit me. It was Eve, Jenny's old friend. My first instinct was hesitation. The last time I had heard her name, it was when Jenny accused her of trying to steal me. Back then, I trusted Jenny blindly. I believed every word she said and saw Eve as nothing more than a snake trying to interfere in our relationship. But standing there now, looking at her, she didn't seem like someone who had done anything wrong. She looked friendly, and from the way her face lit up in surprise when she saw me, I could tell she wasn't holding on to any resentment. She smiled. "Wow, Tyler, I never expected to see you here." I nodded, still processing. "Yeah, it's been a while." For a moment, there was silence. We weren't sure how to act around each other. Back then, we never spoke much. Jenny had made sure of that. But Eve broke the tension by asking if I want to catch up over coffee. I figured, why not? At worst, it would be an awkward conversation, but at best, it could bring me some clarity about things I had never really questioned before. We sat at a small cafe in the mall, and that's when I learned the truth. Eve didn't sugarcoat it. She looked me in the eye and said, "I always felt like Jenny didn't appreciate you. That's why we stopped being friends." That threw me off. That was not the story Jenny had told me. Curious, I asked Eve to explain. Apparently, she had confronted Jenny about the way she treated me. how selfish she was in our relationship, how she didn't seem to value my time or my feelings. But instead of listening, Jenny twisted the situation, accusing Eve of trying to take me for herself. Before Eve could defend herself, Jenny had already spread the rumor to their entire friend group, turning everyone against her. The more Eve talked, the more everything started clicking in my head. It all made sense. Jenny had lied to me. She had painted herself as the victim while making Eve look like the villain, and I had believed it. For the longest time, I had convinced myself that I knew Jenny, that I understood who she was. But now, sitting across from Eve, I realized how much of Jenny's version of reality I had blindly accepted. This wasn't just about the night Jenny betrayed me. It was a pattern. She had a way of making herself look innocent while throwing others under the bus. And the worst part? I had played right into it. I told Eve everything. How I had planned to propose. How Jenny ruined it. How I left everything behind and started over. She listened without interrupting, nodding as if she actually cared. It felt good to finally say it all out loud to someone who truly understood the kind of person Jenny was. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel stupid for believing lies. I just felt relieved. After that day, Eve and I stayed in touch. There was something easy about talking to her. Maybe because she had been burned by Jenny too, or maybe because she didn't expect anything from me. We started spending time together, grabbing lunch, watching movies, just enjoying each other's company. At first, I was guarded. The idea of starting something new, of trusting someone again, made me hesitant. But Eve never pushed. She never asked for more than I was ready to give. And because of that, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could just breathe. One Sunday afternoon, I had just finished cleaning my apartment. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air when Eve texted, saying she was on her way over with something she had cooked. I smiled. She had made it a habit to bring me homemade meals, and honestly, I didn't mind. It was a simple gesture, but it meant a lot. When the doorbell rang, I assumed it was her. Without thinking, I pulled the door open, expecting to see her standing there with her usual warm smile. But it wasn't Eve. It was Jenny. For a second, my mind refused to process it. She looked the same, but there was something hesitant about her, unsure of herself. The first words out of my mouth weren't a greeting, not even an insult. I just stared and asked, "How did you find me?" She opened her mouth to explain, but I didn't let her. I had no interest in whatever excuse she had come up with. I shook my head. Leave. Just like that. Because she had no business being here. She broke down right there on my doorstep, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Through her broken cries, she begged for forgiveness, admitting she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She said she had taken me for granted, that she should have never let me go. She confessed that after I disappeared, nothing in her life had gone right. She searched my face for sympathy, but I felt nothing. Just as I opened my mouth to tell her to leave again, I heard footsteps. Both of us turned. Eve was walking up the steps, carrying a container of homemade food, her smile warm and effortless. She looked radiant, a stark contrast to the mess standing in front of me. Jenny's breath hitched the moment she saw her. Her bloodshot eyes widened in disbelief as she pieced everything together. I didn't hesitate. I stepped forward, pulled Eve into a hug, and kissed her on the cheek. "Welcome," I said, my voice steady. Eve smiled, completely unfazed by Jenny's presence. That was the thing about Eve. She never had to try too hard. And that was enough. Jenny took a shaky step back, her face twisting into something between heartbreak and humiliation. Without another word, I took Eve's hand, stepped inside, and shut the door behind us. Locked it. I didn't look through the peephole to see if Jenny was still there. I didn't wait to hear her footsteps fade. I was done. She had made her choice 2 years ago. Now it was my turn. And looking back, I realized something. Pain is the best teacher. At the time, when Jenny chose that party over me, it felt like my world had collapsed. I questioned everything. Was I too clingy? Too demanding? Was I just not enough for her? But the truth was, I was never the problem. She just didn't value me the way I valued her. Walking away was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was also the thing that saved me. Life is a funny way of balancing things out, doesn't it? After I moved, I focused on myself, worked hard, invested wisely, and built a life I could be proud of. Meanwhile, Jenny jumped into another relationship almost immediately. And not just any relationship, a party guy just like her. At first, it probably seemed like she had it all. But then reality hit. He wasn't just a party animal. He was an abusive one. Eventually, it all fell apart. And when she had nothing left, she showed up at my door, begging. But by then, it was too late. I had moved on. Real love doesn't need to be forced. If someone wants to be in your life, they'll act like it. So, tell me, was I too harsh? Or did she deserve it? Let's talk about it in the comments.